Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Engel, members of the Foreign Affairs Committee. My name is Stephen Oakley. I'm Compassion International's General Counsel. It's my privilege to speak with you today on the topic of Compassion's specific experience in India and the reason that Compassion is merely weeks away from permanently withdrawing its operations in India. By way of brief background, since 1952, it's been the mission of Compassion to help children living in extreme poverty around the world. And today, Compassion is the world's largest child sponsorship NGO with 1.9 million children in 26 countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Compassion has been in India since 1968, and for 5 decades now, Compassion has worked without incident under the authority of successive Indian governments. That abruptly changed in 2013 when Compassion encountered the first of a series of legal and regulatory attacks. This came about in the form of tax cases in which the government assessed over $18 million in corporate income tax on the charitable donations to our locally incorporated South India entity. That was followed by a series of different attacks, Intelligence Bureau investigations, Enforcement Directorate cases. You have before you as an exhibit to my brief a copy of the Ministry of Home Affairs order, which is a prior approval order that prevents Compassion from getting any money into India without the advance clearance of the ministry, which we have found to be a fiction. Finally, both of the FCRAs of Compassion's locally incorporated entities have been denied. We have sought legal advice from multiple lawyers, chartered accountants in India, and to a person, they have assured us and provided us the advice that our operations are legal and lawful under the laws of India. And to a person, they have suggested that to the extent the law is being broken in India, it's being broken by the Indian government in advancing extremely aggressive and legally unsupported interpretations of existing law, knowing that charities often lack the resources or expertise to challenge these interpretations, and when they do, the challenges will take years in court. In discussions with other faith-based NGOs and my own reading of the relevant portions of the Indian Constitution, their Tax Act, and their FCRA laws, I have come to the conclusion that Compassion is experiencing an unprecedented, highly coordinated, deliberate, and systematic attack to drive Compassion out of India. Anecdotally, I'm hearing similar stories from other faith-based and civil society organizations. The reason, apparently, is the government of India wrongly believes that faith-based organizations are using humanitarian efforts to convert Indians to Christianity. And these attacks are occurring under the guise of regulatory compliance, but these reasons are a fiction. It is religious discrimination, pure and simple. The behavior of the Indian government towards Compassion and other faith-based NGOs is, in my view, illegal. It is inconsistent with the values of freedom of expression and freedom of religion, which the Indian Constitution specifically guarantees. And now, as a committee, why should you care? First, as one of the largest NGOs in the world, as the #1 importer of foreign NGO currency into India, if Compassion is forced to withdraw, in my view, this represents a green light to the Indian government to take the same or similar action against a range of other faith-based and secular NGOs. That's a real risk. Second, if the rule of law is breaking down in India, as I believe it is, that impacts not only civil society organizations, not only the NGO sector. That presents a real risk to foreign business in India, to United States businesses in India. The rule of law is essential for all corporations, including not-for-profits and for-profits. Finally, you should care because the Indian government has made no plan, no provision whatsoever for the 145,000 children that Compassion cares for in India. There is no plan for them when we depart. To that end, I have 3 requests. First, we humbly ask that this committee demand that the Indian government immediately rescind the prior approval order, which our counsel tell us was illegally issued and is illegal under their law. Second, we ask that this committee demand that the Indian government reinstate the FCRAs of both of Compassion's locally incorporated field offices in India that have operated for over a decade successfully. Our counsel tell us their revocation was illegal. Third, we ask that you continue to make the fair treatment of NGOs in India a precondition across a spectrum of other issues between the India and United States. Link it to other issues that India cares about. Consequences only have value if they result in changed behavior, so I ask that you send the Indian government a strong message that this matters to the United States. Again, there is no plan for these children if we depart. So we ask you to ask the Indian government to reconsider its decision. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to take your question.
We are fairly familiar with the operations of Compassion, because they also operate in Indonesia, a country that likewise would be concerned about conversions and activity. And what we have found is that largely this is a myth. They're not involved proactively in doing that. It's a rumor. And so the suggestion, which I think is an easy one to resolve the issue, is that if you have a particular channel partner, you know, there's 580 channel partners that's involved in that, all right, you take that off the table. But you allow the rest of the families here in the United States to write those checks to continue to support that effort, and to not only give moral support, but give the opportunity for those younger kids in these families in situations that are so challenged where they can actually complete their education. I mean, it just seems to me that there's the makings here for a compromise in this, which keeps the program open. And maybe I could ask Mr. Oakley on that question for going forward. Is there an opportunity to move forward in a way that would guarantee the support for the destitute that rely on the contributions that come into the country?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, no. There is no path that we see as long as the current MHA order, the prior clearance order, which you all have a copy of, is in place. That order prevents Compassion's funds from being credited to the recipients without the prior approval of the Ministry of Home Affairs. We've worked for 7 months to obtain that prior approval, and we've been unsuccessful.
So let us say for a minute, though, that there was a change of heart and a decision to go channel partner by channel partner. You've got 580 channel partners. And to just review the channel partners and those that are not engaged in activities. I mean, it seems rather dogmatic to shut down the largest program, whole scale, that offers financial support to this sector in India.
Thank you. We completely agree. And of course, we have submitted over 120 channel partners for review by the Ministry of Home Affairs. To this point, they have not even responded to our requests for that prior clearance for that group. And in point of fact, some months ago, when we first heard that there were a few, they described it as a few black sheep in the flock, we said, tell us who those black sheep are, and we will, within 24 hours, separate our partnership with them to alleviate all of your concerns. So that was our offer to them. Subsequently, we agreed to not partner with any channel partner that had not received its NGO before the deadline to, its FCRA before the deadline to receive it. And that too did not produce any desired results. Our inability to communicate with MHA directly has been a source of significant frustration.
So there's the outline, obviously, for a resolution that would fit within their perspective if the decision could be made to look individually at these channel partners and then release the funds.
Thank you, Congressman. Briefly, in terms of the work that we do in India, across the world really, we believe in holistic child development, so we're interested in the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual needs of a child to break the cycle of poverty. I will tell you one of the things I find most interesting about this specific case with India. We push approximately $45 million a year in aid just to India, and by the income tax, by their own calculation, the Income Tax Commissioner of India has evaluated our operations at length and determined that merely 4% of that $45 million a year is for moral and spiritual values education. The remaining 96%, the overwhelming majority, is for all the types of humanitarian interventions you're used to seeing: provision of nutrition, food, clothing, medicine, school tuition, etc.
So it's my understanding you work with children that are designated as undesirable.
Correct. Our population, our criteria for entry into our program is that you're either a child in poverty, as defined by the World Bank, less than $1.90 per day, or extreme poverty of less than $1.25 per day. That is the only criteria. There is no condition based upon religion or any other category.
I just have two questions, and they're, I think, very similar in nature. Question number one is, does the Indian government have the capacity to fill the void that has happened with these children, services for these children? Do they even have the capacity to fill the void? And second, if they do, are they doing anything to try to fill that void?
Thank you, Congressman Salmon. The answer is no. Currently, the worldwide population of children in poverty is around 300 million. And unfortunately, 1/3 of those, over 100 million of those, are in India alone. So compassion is actually just dealing with a very, very small fraction of that. The 145,000 children that are under our care, there will be no provision for them in the eventuality that we have to exit the country. They will become part of that 100 million who are either entirely underserved or underreached.
My experience has been in dealing with humanitarian crises all over the world that the best deliverer of services, bar none, that I've seen anywhere on the globe have been faith-based NGOs and faith-based initiatives. And I think it'd be really tragic if we're not able to get the Indian government to rethink this whole process in the name of the children. And I applaud you for your wonderful, wonderful work, and I think it's incumbent on us. We do have a great relationship, bilateral relationship with India, but even when you have great relationships, even in marriage, when you have a great relationship, I've been married 37 years and have a great relationship, and my wife still tells me when I do things wrong, and I love her for it. It's a great thing, and I think that with even with a great partner like India, we should be very, very outspoken about resuming the great work that you're doing and getting those children cared for. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that comment, and I'd just like to reiterate that our desire is overwhelmingly to work with the government of India to resolve this. We've been there for almost 50 years, and we'd love to be there for another 50. We believe that the diversity of India, religiously, ethnically, is a strength, not a weakness. They should lean into that, and we will help them as part of helping all of their poor kids.